Very warm welcome to the September webinar from Loughridge Transformations, and welcome to you wherever in the world you might be today. So I hope everyone is healthy and is safe, and you are ready for a good discussion around designing, building and sustaining project teams. So by now, you should all be able to see the slides, and you can see us hopefully in the office in Delft. My name is Jennifer Loughridge. I'm the Principal Consultant from Loughridge Transformations, and I'm joined today by Mark Emdin, who I'll introduce in a moment. So just in case you're joining us for the first time today, as I said, my name's Jennifer. I've spent several years in finance in the corporate world, and now I've set up my own company in consulting. So we specialise in functional transformation, and we're based between the UK and the Netherlands, but work with clients globally. So our webinar today, if we want to move to our next slide, is all about teams, about project teams, but actually also about leadership teams. So whether you work with projects or you're in a leadership team, there hopefully will be something to take away for you today. Now, in terms of what we're going to cover, three main things. So we're going to look at team effectiveness and how it's measured. And we're also going to look at the three essential and three enabling conditions for high performing teams. And we'll discuss all about what that is in a moment. And then lastly, we'll look at the 9 key moments where you should consider making a team focused intervention. So as I said, I'm really pleased to have Mark with us today, and he's come over from Amsterdam to join me here in the office in Delft, which is lovely. And we actually both started our careers in big corporates, and that's how we know each other. But I'm pleased that you're here face to face, because of late we've been doing it all over video. So it's very nice to actually see you, and you can see where I really work in real life as well. So that's great. Because I work with finance transformation, I do work from time to time with experts in leadership and in building project teams. So I'm really pleased to have you here and to benefit from your expertise today. There's all sorts of things that you are going to share with the audience, which I think will be really interesting, however it is. And I really like how you can kind of take a very diagnostic approach to things. That fits very well with my way of working as well.
With finance,
yeah,
yes.
Exactly. And I think today on the line, if I'm judging correctly, we have some finance people, we have some people maybe more from the projects world, and actually a quite diverse group of people. But I think there's something in it for everybody today. So I'm really looking forward to that. But Mark, why don't you tell me a little bit about the work you do, better than I just introduced it, and maybe if there's anything else you want to tell people about yourself as well.
Sure, thanks Jen, and welcome to everyone. Lovely to be here in Delft. You make Amsterdam sound so far away. It's only 45 minutes up the road. As you said, we both started life in corporate, and about 3-4 years ago, I set up my own consultancy, looking at, I guess, 2 key areas, both of which are around creating connections, which is where the name of the business comes from, Nexi Consulting, which is all about making connections. So connections within teams, and I have a real passion for teams because they're the engines that deliver in organizations, and they exist from the C-suite, middle management, production lines, all throughout our organizations. So we rely really strongly on teams to deliver. So that's the first. And the second is connections across organizations. So how do not only the teams come together, but maybe also how do organizations come together and need to connect with each other, especially when you think of some of the projects that I know people who've registered for this call are involved in. So capital projects, construction projects, those sorts of things, which again, high level of interdependency, and a lot of what we're going to touch on today will still apply there. A couple of other things apart from the focus of work that I do is I'm also a lover of improvisation. So I've scared Jen a bit.
I actually learned that today. As he announced that when he arrived. I'm like,
which means we have a bit of a flow, but there's a good chance we're going to go completely off piste. But the main thing is that we have a great conversation, and look forward to hearing your questions. Now, we do want to make this as two-way as we can.
And I know that we both, when we're passionate about something, we can talk until the cows come home. So we'll do our best to keep ourselves on time today. Good. Right. Well, maybe then, without further ado, let's get onto what we're here to talk about today. So let's start really at the beginning. So what is it that we know about projects in terms of success and failure? I know statistically out there, and I think you've got even some statistics to share with us, a lot of projects don't actually succeed in the main metrics of success. So tell us a little bit about that from your perspective.
You know, so if you go online and you do a Google search on projects that fail, you get roughly around about the same statistics. You know, KPMG, McKinsey, they'll report that, you know, between 70 and 80% of projects fail to deliver against the promise. An interesting piece of research I found from IBM, which was that internally, when they've reviewed their projects against their 3 goals of schedule, budget, and quality, 40% of projects have failed to deliver against the original promise. You know, one of the key reasons why projects tend to fail is around people, and PwC did some work trying to get behind this, and they said, well, what they found was it was things like unclear objectives, not linked to business goals, poor planning, unrealistic schedules, and unaligned teams, lack of teamwork, poor project management and organization communication. So you can see the link between the fact that most projects don't deliver on the promise, and that promise does tend to be, has the project been delivered on time?
Yeah.
Has it been delivered to the budget that it was stipulated? And is it delivering the quality of work to, you know, the specification, the terms that was spelt out in the original terms of reference, or keeping in mind scope changes?
So I think there's a ton there of things that you've mentioned that will be very much resonating with the people we've got on the line today. But maybe let's dig into a little bit why teams and setting up teams can be so critical in actually making a difference in that regard.
At the end of the day, it's teams that deliver the work. Yeah. It's teams that deliver the project. More importantly, it needs to be a high-performing team that is leading the delivery of that project.
Right, exactly. And not just a random group of people who are free, available, maybe know something, a little bit more to it than that. And we'll get into that in due course. But yeah, I say that because so often project teams are just thrown together depending on who's actually got some spare capacity in, you know, in their time. And it's or
even worse still, don't have the spare capacity. So we'll grab 25% of that person's time, 50% of that person's time, throw them together, and here we have the project team. And there's this desire, and I get it, there's this desire to, well, we've now got the people, just get on and do it. Yeah, time's clock ticking, so we've got to get on. Yeah, exactly. But I know that one of the things you advocate is actually taking some time up front to really do setup stuff. Yes. Do you want to explain that one a little bit? Because I think that's not always commonly done, right? No, it isn't. And you know, I was listening in on the webinar that you did with Tess a couple of weeks ago, and the phrase I loved that you used was, you know, pay now or pay later. The way I look at it is sometimes you need to go slow to go fast. Yeah. And it feels like going slow, but it actually pays dividends later. Yeah. And that is taking the time to set up that team in order that it can deliver. Yeah. And using a very structured approach, framework, methodology, which is scalable, that ensures you've set the team up that needs to deliver the project for success.
And I know a lot of people, myself included historically, I guess, when they're thinking about teams and set up teams, they think about, okay, let's do a team building, let's focus on the interpersonal. Yeah. But your thinking actually goes beyond just the interpersonal stuff, important as that is, but that's not the whole thing from your perspective.
It's not the whole thing. And so this is one of those areas that over the years, I've shifted my own thinking. Quite often when I was starting out in this field, that's where I was brought in to help. Could you help with, as you say, the interpersonals? There's a bit of conflict, focus on the diversity. But then when I went back and checked in with the team leaders after a couple of months and asked, so what has really changed since we did whatever we did, the workshop or the intervention? Yeah. Not much. Yeah. And then when after I... Why is that, do you think? Because the structures weren't in place. Yeah. And structures and systems drive behaviors.
Right. Yeah.
Now,
Logic.
so it's really important to still recognize there's a place for a lot of the behavior work, and I do that. I use things like the Hogan assessments. I use things such as David Cantor's work on structural dynamics, team intelligence surveys, and all of those refer to the need to have the structure in place.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, then what tends to happen is people will fill the gap with their own assumptions.
Yeah.
And that misalignment creates the behavioral conflict.
Yes, makes sense.
Start with the design, get the structures in place, and then, which we'll cover in a moment, and then really go deep on the norms. You need to define your norms, but that's not where you want to start.
Yeah, no, I agree. Makes a lot of sense. So this kind of setup activity that you're talking about there, what kind of things, what does that look like in practical terms?
Well, it's probably good if we have a look at the framework, and then we can spend a bit of time on each of the elements.
So we've got a slide on that actually. So maybe this is a good moment to share the slide with the two triangles on it. And I think that's up on screen now. Right. So I think this is a framework, and probably the first one we want to talk about is team. Right?
We do.
Yeah.
So let me just take a step back. So the 6 team conditions framework, which you see in front of you, was developed by Ruth Wagaman and Richard Hackman from Harvard University. I know a lot of people have come across things around psychological safety as well. Amy Edmondson's work. Amy's work actually references this as well.
Right.
So when you look at that, she talks about this being a precondition for effective learning organizations, and part of that also being part of the psychological safety. So a lot of the research that they did looked at, if you have these 6 conditions in place, and they split them between essentials and enablers, that can lead to a place where it gives your team 80% better chance of being successful.
Let's just pause on that statistic for a moment. 80% chance of being successful.
Doesn't mean that the team, if you don't do it, the team won't be successful, but this gives you a better chance of being successful against the measures of what team effectiveness is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's appealing stuff, huh?
It is. And so if we look at this quickly, the place to start is real team.
Right.
And when we talk about real team, the question that a team leader needs to think about, and ideally even before they've brought the team together, is what is the work that requires this group of people to be interdependent? And
that you've told me before, and this really hit home for me, that doesn't mean what's the project about.
No.
This is about what the team is going to do.
Yes.
Now, so sometimes that's a little bit less clear vis-a-vis the project, but it's something different.
It is. So the purpose of the team is not the same as the purpose of the project. Because the team needs to deliver the project. And there's all the machinations that go around that. So it's about really being clear on what is the work that, let's use a project team. This project team needs to do to deliver the project. What are the interdependencies of the tasks and the people that will be needed to do it? And so when we're also then looking at real team, it's who's on my team? Is it clear? Is it stable? One of those of you who have worked in capital projects and have used IPA to do benchmarking, they'll let you know that changes to your team leadership can be a big determinant around project success or failure. And so is it stable? Is it bounded? When people look up, do they say, I can see who the team is that needs to deliver this project? And so that's what we mean by real team.
Okay, good. That probably takes us into purpose.
It does. Let's go into purpose. And Hans, you can take the slide off if it's
I think it's gone.
It's already done. Okay. So compelling purpose, again, this is around the purpose of the team.
Right.
Which is linked to what the project is. Okay. So what we want to look at here is the purpose clear? If I ask the project team, why do you exist as a team? Do you get the same answer or near enough to it? So is it clear? Is it compelling? Do people feel inspired by it? And is it consequential? So that if we deliver on this, it's going to make a difference to the business, the project, our organization, not-for-profits that I work with as well.
Yeah.
You know, the consequentiality there.
One of the things I like about this one in some of the conversations we've had before is you might not just do this with the project leadership, but you might do it with a decision review board or steering committee, because that's another group where people often find themselves, they're assigned to be on that steering committee, but do they actually think through the things that you just mentioned there? Not always. And they have also a particular purpose and they're a particular group. So even though they're not the project team or the project leadership, I think for them it can also be a useful
There's still
exercise.
a team.
Yeah, exactly.
There's still a team. And they don't often recognize that or spend the time investing in it. There's a project that I'm working with at the moment, which we brought together a group of participants made up of multiple organizations.
Yeah.
And what became clear is there were two teams present in the room. There was the project delivery team, and there was the sponsors from the various organizations that were being part of this alliance that was being created.
It's a common dynamic in that kind of situation, isn't it?
There is. And so what we did was we actually split them apart
Mm-hmm.
and said, right, project leadership, you need to define what is your purpose.
Yeah.
In terms of the project that needs to be delivered, and sponsors, what's your purpose?
And did they struggle with that a bit in the beginning?
Everyone struggles with the purpose
Yeah.
activity, you know, the first time round. But as we walked through it, why this was so useful is it became really clear on the support that the sponsors needed to provide to the project team.
That's so helpful, actually, to get that clarity right at the outset.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other thing was being really clear where the boundaries were.
Yeah.
So that they weren't stepping on each other's toes and interfering with each other, and the whole governance piece becoming messy.
Yeah.
So there you start looking at this concept of the interdependency between teams.
Yes.
And so what we call the team of teams.
Yeah.
And if you're really wanting to drive organizational change or embed and sustain, you don't change organizations one team at a time.
No.
The best way to do it is to look at multiple teams. How do they fit and sit together? There's some great work done by two academics called Rumler and Braish, and they talk about managing the white space between the boxes.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where balls and value, balls get dropped and value gets eroded.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've talked about team, we've talked about purpose, and the third part of the essentials is the right people. So let's dig into that a little.
So right people here is about having the right set of skills and diversity on your team to deliver. It's not team size.
Right.
We'll come to that in a moment, but having the right people about, do I have, as I said, the right set of skills, the right diversity, and are we using both of those in as effective and impactful way as possible? So this again comes back to, am I clear on what is the work that my team needs to be doing?
Yeah.
Is it clear what my purpose is or the team's purpose is? And rather than, as you said, scrambling around to find people who are available, are we finding the right people with the right skills and the right diversity? You know, diverse teams make better decisions.
Yeah.
They are harder to work with.
Oh, for sure, but
they do make
reap
better
the
decisions.
rewards. Yeah. And I think, you know, you can think about diversity in a number of ways. So it's diversity of thought, but even very practically, particularly if you're doing something like a technology-led implementation, you get a lot of people focused on the technology, but do you have enough people who are thinking about organization?
Yep.
Do you have enough people who are thinking about process? Do you have enough people thinking about controls? Obviously, as a finance person, I'm going to think of controls as well. But actually, you need a balance of skills when you're making that kind of transformational change, because it is far-reaching. And if you can then get the right skills, but also then some diversity of thought, you're really onto a winner, I think. Yeah. All right, so that's the essentials. Maybe we should talk about the enablers now.
Yeah, let's do that. And you know, you can't work on everything at once. So the reason why those three are called the essentials, that's where to start.
Right.
Now, be really clear about what's the work, where's the interdependency, how am I going to lead this project? So coming back to the interdependency piece, you know, we see a lot of projects that are work stream based.
Yes.
And so one of the things to really dig into is, how interdependent are the work streams? Or is it that the project leader is, to use that Dutch expression, the spinner in the web, the spider in the web? Everything comes through that individual.
Yeah.
So is there really the level of interdependency? Or if
there isn't, right?
Well,
not as much as people often think.
not as much as they identify, but when you start actually looking at how the work needs to be delivered, it's there. Or what happens is that's captured by the change management work stream, which sits underneath.
Those souls need to pull it all together. I've seen that many times. Okay, so that's about structure. What about context?
Well, let's come back to sound structure. So sound structure is looking at every team benefits from having a few healthy structures in place. So this is where the work practices come in, the norms and behaviors. I
guess this is where you might feed a little bit of the interpersonal stuff in if you were looking at the holistic thing.
Exactly. And it starts with very simple things. And there's some teams that I've been working with where we've had quite, animated discussions around simple things such as team meetings. How often, who needs to attend, preparation of agendas, agreements around pre-read, those sorts of things.
And I guess today, or in the current situation, how often do you come into the office? What do you do virtual? What do you do face-to-face would be an obvious one to include at this point, because especially if you're bringing people together from different organizations or from different departments, each department can have made its own arrangements about hybrid working. So in a project setting, you can have to look at that from fresh.
Exactly. Well, actually, any team needs to. And so one of the things is for any team, since you mentioned hybrid, is to have that conversation around what are the conditions or what is it within our context that will require us to be coming together face to face, rather than just a company policy that says everybody needs to be in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but really getting intentional about from our work, what is it that requires us to come together face to face, and that could be different phases of the work. So it's about the team setting up its structures. This is where team size also comes in, and that you've got the size of team that reflects the work that needs doing at that stage. And quite often what I see with some leadership teams is this desire of team leaders, noble as it is, to be too inclusive.
I know what you mean. You sort of, every Tom, Dick and Harry sort of gets a little bit included, but actually, if you come back particularly to your essentials, are they the right people? Do they fit the purpose and all that stuff? Right?
It doesn't mean you can't invite people to meeting sessions on an as needs basis, but remember that real team is it clear who's on the team and is it bounded? And therefore, with sound structures, have I got the right size? Because if you're interdependent, then you've got relationships between everybody on the team. And every time you add one person to the team, the number of relationships increases exponentially. And there's one, they called themselves a team, but they're really a group of 22 people that I was working with. And so we dealt with that, we unpacked it, and they came around to realize they need to be a high performing group. Because not everybody connects with each other the same way. And by recognizing that, it actually took a lot of pressure off the team. Because some people
frees you up in a way.
Exactly. Some people were feeling, I need to be connecting with everyone. Well, actually, no, you don't, because the work doesn't require it. But there are aspects of the work where you do need to connect with others. So the sound structures is things like, have I got the right size team? Have I got the right work practices in place that keeps us connected? It's easy to find information. Are we clear on what are the behaviors which are acceptable and unacceptable to the team? As well as, are we clear on how we as a team need to behave with our stakeholders and those external to the team? So this is one that quite often gets overlooked. So, we're all representatives of the team externally. What do we expect of each other when it comes to engaging with those external stakeholders? And what are the consequences if someone steps out of line? What permission are we giving each other to hold each other to account? And this is also where the work around psychological safety is really important and fits in.
So one thing we haven't really talked about is how scalable and flexible this is, because I don't want people to come away with the thinking that this is only for the grandest of projects and it's an enormous effort, because I know you've told me about a couple of experiences you've had where you've done it in really kind of fit for purpose ways, in an agile way, if that's the way the team is working. So do you want to maybe talk a little bit about how you do it when you do it quite small, because a lot of what we've talked about sounds quite grand.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I just want to come back to supportive context quickly, and team coaching, and then I'll answer your question.
Okay.
All right.
So
supportive context is, every team operates in a larger system. In an organization. So part of the success of a team is dependent on does the organization set it up for success?
Yes.
And there we're looking at things such as, does the team have access to the information it needs to deliver its work and information from others in a timely way? If the team needs to come up with a novel way or approach of doing the work and they don't have the skills, can they access the training and education to do it? So that's around, how does the rest of the organization support the team?
And I guess if you're a sponsor of a project, this is one that you should be paying particular attention to, because effectively you're the one creating the context for the project team.
And I worked with a team once that was really trying hard. And they had most of the elements in place, but the thing that they were struggling with was around supportive context. Because they were sitting in primarily in Europe. Leadership of the organization was in Asia Pacific. It wasn't clear what's the organization's strategy. Therefore, the decision-making rights that they had as a team relative to the rest of the organization. So the whole global governance, which comes into that supportive context, wasn't helping them be as effective as they could. And coaching is the last one, and it's intentionally last. So team coaching here is, well-designed teams benefit from having some sort of expert coach help them reflect and learn. Because high-performing teams have got two tasks. One is to deliver the work, and the second is to be a team. So if you think of you're sporting analogies a lot. If you think about football teams, they spend most of their time practicing to be a team. Their delivery of task, which is match day, is relatively small. And so team coaching here is about, do you have access to that? It could be someone like me, it could be someone from within the organization, but it's someone who can help the team be reflecting and helping improve the team performance. And the reason why it's last is you can't coach a badly designed team to become high performing.
No, you've got some
if you haven't got so if you haven't got the other five in place, you can't coach the team to become a high performing team. You can coach a well-designed team to become a high performing team.
Here's a question for you though, because and you alluded to this a little bit when you talked about historically how you may have worked or things that happened in your career. Often when things aren't going right, the first thing people do is call for some coaching. How do you sort of enlighten them, so to speak, that that's actually the piece that comes last?
By walking people through this and asking the questions around, so tell me about your team.
So a bit of a diagnostic.
It's a diagnostic, and it's that conversation, and because as you said, it's the come in and can you help fix my team? These people are having an argument. And so one of the things that the research has found, and it's human nature, is we don't like ambiguity. We don't like vacuums. We tend to fill them. So if we're not clear as a team and aligned as a team around what are our norms and agreements around behavior, I'll come up with what I think is right.
It's usually from best intentions.
Or from best intentions. You'll come up with what you think is the right way to work. And that could be things such as delivery schedule, the way we're going to deliver plans or reports. And because we're at cross paths, we clash. Whereas if we'd spent the time up front, remember this is that go slow to go fast, or pay now or pay later. If we'd spent time up front being really clear on what is the work we need to do together. Equally, where is it okay for us to be working independently? How are we going to deliver our work, et cetera, et cetera.
No, it makes a lot of sense. But not often given the attention.
No, and one of the, this is one of those critical, setting up teams for projects is critical.
Yeah.
And when I was at Shell and we were looking at why some of our projects were more successful than others,
Yeah.
we developed our 8 project principles.
Yes.
That if you followed these principles, your project had a greater chance of success.
And I think, by the way, that works whether you're talking about capital projects or transformation projects. It's more about projects and teams than it is about what they're delivering,
It
as
is.
it were.
And the one of those 8 projects was around strong teams deliver.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting to see is that the UK Infrastructure and Projects Authority, and that's not just capital projects, that's also IT implementations and everything. They've also developed what they've called their principles for project success.
And I think we've just shared a link there, which people can have a look at afterwards, to what you're talking about.
Yeah, and look, and I encourage you to have a look at it, as well as the other resources that are on the site there as well. There's some really good things around organization design within projects. And in their principles, they actually identify 3 of 8, which are people and behavior related.
Yeah.
So things such as prioritize people and behavior, which is what we've touched on here.
Yeah.
Tell it like it is, which is the psychological safety and being transparent, open, and none of the hidden surprises.
Yeah.
And the last one, which is learn from experience. Now, learn from experience, you actually want to do at the start of your project.
You've told me about something. We've all probably heard about after action reviews, but you talk about before action reviews.
Yes.
And that's what this is about, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So before action review is something that came from the US Army, and it's as you're about to embark on a piece of work, think about what are the challenges we're going to face.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Where are all the challenges we're going to face? The second is tap into the wisdom of the group as well as others who you may have access to. How have we take a step back. What is it we need to deliver?
Yeah.
What are the challenges we're going to face? Where have we overcome these in the past?
Yes.
So what techniques, practices, tools, ways of working have we used to overcome these? And then based on that, what are some of the norms and ways of working that we agree on that are fit for purpose for this project?
Yeah.
And doing that up front, and that can help in framing some of the sound structures.
And I guess coming back to scalable, that's something that can just be a few minutes conversation before you embark on something.
Yeah.
Or it can be maybe a day's workshop as you really work it out. You can really alter it to get the value out of it for the size of what you're working on.
So you asked me about scalability. Yeah. Working through these conditions, you could do that at the start of a meeting.
Yeah.
Why are we here? What's our purpose? Have we got the right people in the room?
Yeah.
What are the ground rules or the way we're going to approach this meeting? How we're going to capture information? Have we got everything that we need? Supportive context, etc. And then at the end of the meeting, do a very simple grippy, the reflective piece where we're clear on our goals, how were the roles, our interpersonal behaviors, and so forth.
Yeah.
Equally, toolbox talks. Now, for those who aren't familiar with a toolbox talk, it's before you embark on a piece of work, generally on a construction site. I've also heard of this being done or read about it being done before going into surgery, the surgical team. In those moments before doing the work, being really clear. What is the work we need to do? Is everyone clear what their role is? Does everybody know who else is who's here today, who's going to do the work? Are we clear on the risks? If anybody feels as though that there's something not going right, especially this is the role of the team leader, invite the intervention. So this is really scalable and has been used with C-suite, and my colleagues at 16 Conditions have used this extensively. We use this at Shell with the executive committee there as well, with the C-suite.
The thing I like about it is it's so, in terms of its philosophy, there's a lot of links to continuous improvement, whether you're talking about agile or lean ways of working, it really sort of ties together. So if you're working in an environment where agile is used, or you're doing Lean Six Sigma kinds of projects or anything, it's such a natural fit because you're getting after the same things. I think it can be really powerful in that
it way. It is. And my colleague at 16 Conditions, Abe Abella, who works a lot in the agile space, uses the 16 Conditions framework as his kind of go-to approach for agile teams, for the very reason that it's flexible, it's scalable, and it delivers.
Yeah, I mean, you can, it really is clear that makes sense, actually. Yeah, not like it. Very good. Okay, so I'm just having an eye on the clock as well.
There's an interesting question which has come.
Okay.
Would you like to take it now?
Sure.
Yeah, let's have a wee look. I'll go off screen a little bit to make it click. Okay, so do you want me to read the question, Tushar?
I can read it out for everybody.
Okay, that would be helpful. Thanks.
It says, do you recommend using team personality assessment? How much is the output actually being put to use?
Right.
So with team personality assessments.
Is that Myers-Briggs and things? Is that what they mean, or?
Yeah, so personality assessments there's a whole range of them. So things like Myers-Briggs, Insight. As I said, the one that I prefer to use is Hogan Assessments.
Yeah.
Which whilst that it really focuses on individuals, you can also look at the results in a team context. So there's a lot of personality tools. Where they come to play is in the processes of how the team is doing its work. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't got those structures in place first, trying to start with personality can be very difficult because the people don't know what is it that we need to be doing, that we need to then be tapping into our the personality issues.
You apply what you've learned through those profiles, right? I've seen that before there, where you think, well, let's do that. That's a great start. But the dots aren't sufficiently connected for people, right?
No, it's really important that I'm clear on what is the work we need to be doing. Yeah. Against which the personality piece comes in. And I'm not saying you don't look at personality. So when you look at the life cycle of a team, there's kind of three really key points. And this goes for any team, whether you're together for a day on a project, or even a team that exists for an extended period of time. You know, there's discrete pieces of work. There's the kickoff piece, which is what we've touched a lot on. And at that point, it's really the team finding its way, and the team leader needing to do that pre-thinking, the pre-work around the team I need to create. That's an important nuance that you're pulling out there. There is a specific role for the leader. Yes. And they should be thinking about it before they get everybody together. Yeah. You don't see that often, actually. No. So there's a really good piece of work that again Ruth Wagaman did, which took the rough figure is 60-30-10, and it's about, when you ask team leaders, where do you spend your time? Yeah. Is it in the design of your team? Is it launching the team, or is it coaching the team? Mm-hmm. And most say, I spend my time coaching the team. Yes. And they think that's the right answer. Yeah. Whereas the most effective thing and the most important thing to do would be spending 60% upfront on the design of the team that I need to have in place to deliver the work. Yeah. Going through what we've discussed, and the role I play quite often is guiding a team leader through a conversation and challenge around this. The 30% is what we call the launch. So breathing life into the team. Yeah. And a launch doesn't need to be a big launch event. No. You know, it can be a 2-hour session. Exactly. Depending on what the project is. And then the 10% is coaching. Yes. Yeah. So as I said, there's three places in the life of a team. There's that beginning piece. There's the middle. Mm-hmm. And the reason why the middle is important is because when you get to that stage, the end is now closer than the beginning. Yeah, and that psychologically does something to you, right? It does. In rough parlance, it's known as the oh shit moment, because if we haven't delivered enough by midpoint, and that's where that on spec, on budget, on time thing really starts to get uncomfortable if it's not going as it should. Yeah. So while the first part is about getting the design, getting the structures, getting the processes in place, that midpoint is a really good time to be reflecting on how we're doing the work. Yeah. And so that's where some of the personality stuff can come in. Yes. And double check into that. And then the third phase is at the end. Yeah. And that's where you want to harvest the learnings. And too often, that's why IPA said, learn from experience is one of their principles. Because how often is it that, and we've all done it, you get to the end of the project, you celebrate, you go out for a lunch or dinner, and then you're quickly on to the next one. Or even worse than that, people start to get released. Yes. As they're not fully occupied, or so you get that kind of rundown thing. So you get this trickling away effect, and then you don't at all capture stuff, and you're very lucky if you then can get people to come back for some kind of reflection session. You lose the knowledge. Yeah. which really can become a organizational differentiator.
I think so. Yeah.
If this is your bread and butter.
And it's obvious if you're talking about capital projects, because you want to get better and better and better. But the same applies in something like a digital transformation, where you might be saying, going from one country to the next, implementing a new piece of technology or something new that's going to change things digitally for you. And that kind of rollout sequence, it's the same thing. It's a different scale from a capital project, but it's the same.
It's the same thing.
You got to learn, you got to get better and get better.
So learning organizations are the ones that thrive. Yeah. And that plays into that.
It's also the most fun places to work
They
too,
are.
right? So it does things about engagement of people too.
And also you mentioned the word agile. So with agile projects, a key part of agile is learning.
Yes.
And if you're a part of I know we've got some people on the call who are also part of tech startups, where agile and sprints are their way of working. A key element of sprints is to look back.
That comes in at the end.
It's that learning loop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. So Tushar, do we have any other questions that we should take just now? I can see there's actually quite a lot of questions coming in. Let me have a wee look if there's any we want to take now, or we hold them over.
The reason why Jen's moving out of shot is the screen's a little bit too far for us to read.
My eyesight isn't quite good enough. Okay, I think there's a lot there. We'll just come back to them, but I think that tells us we need to maybe wrap up and move to Q&A. So we
sure, yeah, happy to do that.
So
just before we go to Q&A, some of the things we've touched on. If you go to my website, which is nexiconsulting.com, I've started to write a few blogs on these topics, and we'll also come to it in those 9 team moments that matter. And there you can actually download some resources.
Good.
And we'll share some as well through.
Yeah, and there'll be bits and pieces coming out after this webinar as well. So we'll make sure that people get access to all the links that they need. Okay, so time for it. We could have talked for a lot longer. So we've just scratched the surface today, but I hope it's given people a bit of a taste. And I can see there's plenty of questions coming in. But if you're not yet sure how to ask a question, just a wee reminder here, you can click the question mark box up at the top, and then you can type a question in. You might not see it immediately because it needs to be published. So let's have a look.
I have just published an interesting question if you would like to take, and I'll read.
Go ahead, Tushar. This is my eyesight's just not good enough.
To build a high delivery team, how much is the critical the balance among capacity, capability, and interest of any member? I mean, quite interesting. I think that's quite relevant to our discussion.
Okay, so that's about right people, and how do you balance things?
So, how do you balance capability?
So capacity, how much time do they have? Capability is their skill.
And then interest.
And then do they care?
Well, hopefully. Let's start with the capability. Yeah. So you as team leader, hopefully it's in your gift to decide who's going to come onto your project team.
Yeah.
Or working with your sponsor around who will be made available to be on your project team.
Yeah.
And this is also a reflection of where does this project sit within the organization's priorities?
Yeah, that will really come to light at that moment if it hasn't
when you're looking
already.
At capability. Yeah. And if you can't get, and it's a horrible term to use, but if you can't get the A team, because everybody wants the A team. In fact, it's not about the A team, because it's also about using the project as a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So if you're going to bring people on and you haven't got the required capability up front, what's the development plan to bring people up?
Yeah, you
so that when they go into the next
training,
one,
didn't you? Yeah. No,
so that's around capability. Capacity, I have a firm belief that if a person is less than 50%, and ideally, that's more than 75% on a project like this, you've got to question not their commitment, but their own capacity to be to deliver.
Yeah, you see it often where people get like 1 day a week or maybe 1.5 days a week devoted to the project. It's worse than useless.
And why it becomes so difficult?
It's not fair on them, and it's not fair on the team.
Exactly, because what becomes really difficult is how do you plan meetings?
Exactly.
How do you keep things moving at pace if people aren't available to do the work? Yeah. And if people are needing to, you also put people in a difficult position because they're having to make choices around their own priorities. Do I work for this boss or that boss, or this piece of work or that piece of work? And that creates anxiety.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't work.
The last piece about motivation is a really interesting one. So one of the measures of effective teams is, do individuals enjoy being a part of this team.
Yeah.
So the three measures: is the team delivering what its stakeholders expect of it?
Yep.
Is the team continuing to develop and evolve as a team?
Yeah.
And the third is, do team members feel a sense of value, continual learning and enjoyment being part of this team?
Right.
So we want to be making sure that we're having that conversation with someone about why we want you on this project. Does this fit into their own learning goals? Are they committed to it? And if not, question, what's the impact of having a non-committed person on your project?
Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
better not to have them.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So I think this is maybe a good time to mention, because we've got so many questions coming through, that actually, and we hadn't announced this before, we're going to do a more interactive 20 minutes or so thereafter. So in a moment, we'll share a sort of normal Teams meeting link with you. And if you're free for the next 20 minutes or so, you can come and have a more interactive session with other participants as well. So bear that in mind. But let's have a look. What next question, please, Tushar.
Yeah, quite interesting one another. I think the audience is just quite keen. I mean, I'm looking at the next question. How do you manage the fact that some key project members might be in 4 different teams at the same time, perhaps even with different leaders and different goal purpose? I think this is something which is related to which we discussed earlier, that when people have got different capacities and we just bargain some of the time from each of the split team members. Yeah.
This
competing priorities.
It's competing priorities.
Yeah.
This is an org design challenge as opposed to a team challenge.
Yeah.
So this is having the conversation with the senior leaders who manage the resources, making choices around priorities.
Yeah.
Now this is an org design question.
And even if the group of people you're pulling on are project resources, so I've managed that in the past, where you've had about 30 people and you've got to allocate them to projects.
Yeah.
If you're doing your decision-making criteria well enough as the one controlling those resources, you don't allocate people to 4 or 5 projects, because you're not helping. Well, it's back to what we were just discussing, right? It doesn't help anybody if the people are spread too thin. So even if you have a pool of flex resources that you manage, you need to be thinking about the impacts.
Very much so. And that's for the key resources. So that's for key roles. But I also recognize on some projects, you'll have people who are involved, small parts, that they're delivering small elements, and therefore they may be working across multiple projects.
That's right.
The thing that's really important there is to be having good quality commitment conversations with the individual. Yeah,
and just, I mean, commitment conversation might not be a term that everybody's familiar with. What do you mean with that?
So there's real clarity. So if you're the team leader or a work stream lead, there's real clarity and shared understanding. What is it that you're asking that person to deliver?
Yeah.
And are they clear about it?
Yeah.
There's a great technique you can use called the back brief. So if I'm asking someone to deliver a piece of work in a particular way, I ask them to brief back to me how they understood. Okay, so that's the first thing. Commitment around the things that are needed, so around time, format, all of that.
Yeah.
And there's effectively 3 answers. One which is yes, I can do it. And remember, the yes, I can do it is I will do it within the agreed time and the agreed spec. No, I won't or can't because.
Yeah.
Or I can only do it under these conditions.
Yeah. And I think what you mentioned there is important. So I've seen this done sometimes where people focus on the first part, but they don't do the part where they ask what resources you need, how much time you need. And I've actually seen a situation where someone says, well, I'm committed. Don't doubt the genuine commitment I have to what you're doing, but I also need to sleep.
Yes.
I also need to spend time with my family. And that was a kind of wake up call moment for the person asking the question. I think that it's not only about the passion that you have for what you're doing, but there's also real practical stuff that also needs to be in place, and that's what makes it two-way, right?
Very much. And if someone's saying that, then it's kind of we need to escalate it, because me as project leader, if I'm now needing to tap into a resource who's spread so thinly, it's probably not just me on my project who's suffering, but there's multiple projects that will suffer.
That was a super senior group, by the way. So, I mean, it was a real indicator that there was more afoot.
And that's where you get into things like organizational health.
Yeah.
If you're stretching people too thinly in multiple directions, they can't do any part of their job well. They feel dissatisfied. Issues around engagement and so forth.
Can ultimately lead to really stressful situations. Yeah, absolutely.
People will leave.
All right. So, interest of time, we'll go on to the next question. So Tushar, I just can't see that. I'm not going to pretend to look now. Tushar, just give us the next one, please.
Yeah, the questions are really pouring. Let me publish another one.
Teams are important.
Yeah.
That's why it's great to see so many questions.
Yeah,
come in.
the turnout's really, really
Yeah.
high today. We can see that, by the way. You can't see that as an individual, but it's very high
I think we
turnout.
had over 100 people sign up.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from a lot of different places in the world too. So this question
Is project team also consistently evolve? People come and go. How does model deal with the constant flux?
Yeah, great question. So, and sometimes not just the project team, but the project team leader as well. Now, we've said you want to keep your project team as certainly the project leadership team.
Yeah.
So remember, projects made up of multiple teams, so things will change. You want to keep them as stable as possible. When someone does move off and someone else moves on, being intentional about the onboarding.
You use the word intention there, and you do talk about intentionality quite a lot. And I think that's almost the key to it. Don't just let it happen to you. Be in control and be intentional about the steps.
Yeah.
Stuff happens,
Yeah.
right? You don't, things that people will move on. People can even resign from the company or whatever, but take then an intentional response to that situation and do something about it.
And what's great about using something like the 6 team conditions framework is you can use that as the basis for your onboarding.
Yeah.
So if somebody joins, say, a project leadership team, the team, don't just let it be the team leader, but the team can onboard the new member around, this is the work that we've agreed together around our interdependency, around our purpose, around how we've agreed we're going to work together. Is this clear to you? Can you sign up to it? Is there help that you need in order to become a full member of this team?
Because we've got a new
I do a lot of work with startups. This reminds me of a startup that I was working with, which was predominantly a family business, and they were looking to bring someone new in because they needed to grow. So the conversation we were having was, how are you going to onboard that person?
That's a difficult moment in most,
especially when it's a family business.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what they were saying was, well, that person will need to get to know us. I said, well,
need to get to know them as well.
It's like inviting someone to your dinner table because you as a family, you talk in code, you have shorthand, you're going to have conversations in the evening that person won't be a part of because they're going to be at their own family dinner table. Exactly. So we needed to flip it around. How will you prepare yourselves, and what will you do differently to make that entry of someone effective? And the tactic that they actually ended up using was, yes, they needed to recruit someone, but they actually needed to recruit 2 people. So they decided to do it at the same time.
Yeah.
So you've got almost safety in numbers.
Yeah, no, that's wise. Hey, I think we're going to have to begin to wrap up. So just a reminder that we'll show you the link in a moment. If you want to continue the conversation in a slightly more informal way, we'll be doing that. But in the meantime, if you do need to leave on the hour, let me thank you very much for joining us. And I think you've probably had a little bit of a flavour of what Mark does, and hopefully also a bit of a flavour of what I do. And what we wanted to offer the participants today, we will be giving on a first come, first served basis 5 free 20-minute consultation sessions with us. All you need to do is drop me an email at jennifer.loughridge@loughridgetransformations.com. And if you're among the first, we'll get in touch with you and we'll set something up. And that can be because you want to dive more deeply into something that we've covered today, or it might be you think, hey, these guys know something that I've got on my kind of worry list, and you want to have a bit of a chat. So totally free and open to anyone, as say, first come, first serve basis, and you'll hear back from us if you're one of the ones who we are able to have that meeting with.
And I think it's a great opportunity. Now, you've run so many of these webinars now that for those of you who are serial attenders, if there's themes that are emerging that you want to go deeply with Jennifer on, this is a fantastic opportunity to do that.
Thank you for that, Mark. It is. So beyond that, we would love to stay in touch. So if you haven't already connected on LinkedIn to Mark and myself, please do go ahead and do that. Send us a connection request. Mark's already mentioned that at nexuconsulting.com there's other material, and you have a blog there. We also have a blog at loughridgetransformations.com, and we're relatively active with that. We've also put a couple of links there if you want to check those out. And if you in any other way you want to schedule time with me and Mark, there's also a link there to schedule time with us, and just look for me and I will liaise with Mark to make sure our diaries are lined up. So I think
and a reminder to hang around if you want to continue some of the conversation.
Indeed. So our next webinar is in October. More details will come on the website and on LinkedIn around that. Any other questions, just drop us an email. So maybe we can go to the next slide now, which has the link there for the Teams meeting. As I say, it's a more conventional Teams meeting, and I think Tushar is also going to drop the full link if he has it, so you can just click on that to join it. But in any case, if you just go to Teams and join with a meeting ID and a code, put in those details there, and you should come into the shared session. So I hope to see as many of you there for that as possible. It'd be nice to do a little bit more interactions other than just us talking to the screen. So hopefully we get quite a few people joining that. Otherwise, look out for other mails with us, because I think you've got some handouts that we're going to give out in due course. So do check your spam folder if you don't find anything. That's usually the well, there's all sorts of rubbish there, but there's also usually some good stuff from people like us there as well. So do not forget to check that. And with that, wish you a good day and looking forward to see you in the next one. Bye for now.